So, the US government is getting a pretty big overhaul in how it spends money and where its people actually work. Today, we're going to break down two new executive orders that are aimed at bringing, well, common sense to a system that the administration says has become really inefficient. Let's get right into it. And it all kind of boils down to this one massive question, right? The federal government is one of the largest, most complex organizations on the entire planet. So, when we talk about reform, we're talking about a challenge on a scale that's, well, it's almost hard to imagine. And these two orders we're looking at are a direct shot at trying to answer this. I mean, to really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number. Every single year, the federal government spends almost $1 trillion just on buying things. We're not talking about salaries or benefits or anything like that. This is purely for procurements. That's everything from paper clips to fighter jets. So you could see the stakes for getting this right are absolutely enormous. All right, so what's the actual problem these executive orders are trying to fix? The documents themselves lay out a pretty clear diagnosis of what they see as the core issues, and it all starts with that $1 trillion purchasing system. Yeah, this phrase right here, it's pulled directly from one of the orders, and it really gets to the heart of the issue. The argument is that trying to sell something to the federal government has become prohibitively inefficient and costly. The whole idea is that the system has gotten so tangled up that it actually scares away potential competition, and in the end, just drives up prices for taxpayers. And it doesn't stop there. The order basically calls the whole regulatory system an onerous bureaucracy. I mean, the idea here is that you've got decades of rules just layered on top of more rules, and it's created a system that's incredibly difficult for anyone, whether you're inside or outside of government, to navigate effectively. And this number, wow, it pretty much says it all. We're talking over 2,000 pages. That's how long the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR, is. This is supposed to be the simple rulebook for how the government buys things, and it's so long and complex now that it basically takes a team of lawyers just to figure it out. Okay, so let's pull this all together. The picture these documents are painting is, well, it's of a system that's broken in some pretty fundamental ways. That massive rulebook, it's become a huge barrier. You've got these outdated policies forcing government offices into the most expensive real estate in the country. And it's not just the administration saying this. Other expert reports have been flagging the exact same issues. The bottom line is, it's making it harder and more expensive for the government to buy everything it needs, from basic laptops all the way up to advanced weapons systems. So, the big question is, how do you even begin to fix all this? Well, the first step is to go right after that massive rulebook. Executive Order 14275 is all about reforming the Federal Acquisition Regulation. And what's really fascinating, is the history of this thing. The FAR was created more than 40 years ago with a really simple goal: make government buying uniform, consistent, and easy. The irony, which the executive order points out, is that it's become the exact opposite. So the goal now is basically a total reset. And this isn't just some vague goal. The order lays out a very specific step-by-step process to get this done. It kicks off with each agency appointing a senior official to spearhead the effort. Then the Office of Management and Budget, that's OMB, which is basically the White House's main budget office, is going to issue guidance. From there, the actual work of rewriting the FAR begins, and it all leads to publishing brand new rules. It's a really structured attempt to untangle a very complex knot. Okay, and check this out. This is a really interesting idea they're floating. It's called a regulatory sunset. The concept is pretty simple, actually. Any new regulation could automatically expire after 4 years unless somebody makes a conscious, active decision to renew it. It's kind of a built-in self-cleaning mechanism to stop the rulebook from getting bloated all over again. All right, so that's the rulebook. Now let's talk about the second major piece of this puzzle. Executive Order 142074 tackles a completely different but just as costly issue, where the federal government actually puts its employees. And you have to understand, this is a massive shift in thinking. For decades, federal policy basically pushed agencies into super expensive downtown business districts and historic buildings. This new order? It just throws all of that out the window. Now, the new focus is on freeing up agencies to choose locations that are actually cost-effective and, make sense for their mission, no matter where that might be. So when you put these two big reforms together, one for how the government buys stuff and one for where its people work, you really start to see the bigger picture taking shape. This is what the administration is branding as a common sense overhaul of the government's entire back office operation. And look, it's really important to get that these changes aren't just happening on their own, in some kind of vacuum. They're all part of a much bigger strategic goal,
which is to, and I'm quoting here, alleviate unnecessary regulatory burdens. So in other words, this is a key part of a much wider push for deregulation across the government.
All right, so if you take away just two things from all of this, let it be these. First, there's a huge effort underway to simplify that massive 2,000-page government purchasing rulebook. And second, there's a big policy change to give federal agencies way more freedom to find office space that saves taxpayer money.
And that, of course, leaves us with the really big question, doesn't it? The goal is clearly a more agile, more efficient government. But changing a system this massive is never that simple. Will this overhaul really bring common sense back to how the government operates? Or could simplifying old rules accidentally create a whole new set of problems? That's the billion or maybe even trillion-dollar question.